Welcome to the Performance Formula with JODY Martins. So Zoe, officially welcome to the Performance Formula podcast. It is really, really awesome having you with me here.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it.
I'm going to start this conversation in a slightly different way. I want to know, with everything that you know and everything that you understand about performance and about life and whatever it may be, what do you think is the best thing we can learn from you in this conversation?
Such a great opening question. Of all the things that I know, with all of the hats that I wear, I think you need both mindset and strategy. I think a lot of people focus on one or the other. And I think the people who do best, whether that's in professional career or in sports, I think they work on their mindset and they have a really clear plan that they are very consistent and disciplined in following. I think you need both.
Okay. So if we had to sort of delve into that a little bit, right? So if you think of mindset, what is that for you?
I think if you were to peel it back, the conversations that I have with my clients is the beliefs that you hold, because the beliefs that you hold shape your mindset. Your mindset is the collection of those beliefs, and those beliefs will either drive you forward or they're going to hold you back. So although they might have lots of individual beliefs, and some that would have been shaped from your very early years, some that will have been shaped more recently, I think the attention to how you talk to yourself, the language that you use, the things that you say to yourself when things go well, and the things that you say to yourself when things don't go so well is often the indication of the beliefs that you hold. And if you can keep a check in on those and work on those, then collectively, that's what, for me, makes a really powerful, positive mindset.
I'm gonna I don't know if this is a great question, right? But it's sort of informed by my own struggles, so as to say. I don't know if struggles is the best word to use, but I suppose we all have a struggle in life. When we become aware of our beliefs, all right? So I've found that sometimes I get so stuck in like the world of beliefs, right? And that what am I believing in? What's the effect of that? That it actually leads to things like, well, what's the best belief to have? And like now I'm craving this idyllic belief that would miraculously solve all the problems, right? Because if it's true that the belief drives the performance, well, then if I can have the best one, then I can get the best performance. And I don't know if there's really a question in that, but hopefully that sort of gives you an idea of maybe where I want to go is so what do you make of that, right? So if it is that these beliefs are driving us, how do we work with them in a way that allows us to be efficient and effective with them rather than, because I've seen this in some of my clients too, right? They start going like, oh, I need the best one. I need this to be sort of, yeah. And I see you laughing.
Such an athlete mindset of wanting the best, isn't it? As an athlete, you strive for the best. You strive for the best performance. You strive for the best equipment. You strive for the best coach and trainer. You strive for the best facilities. So it makes sense that you would strive for the best way of thinking, or the best way of responding, or the best way of training. I think that's very reflective of that athlete mindset and the high performing athlete mindset.
So are there better beliefs?
I think that's quite individual. I think it's the beliefs that you hold for yourself. I would imagine if we were to speak to, I guess if we spent a day in the Olympic Village and we got the opportunity to walk around and speak to those athletes that have reached that level, I suspect we would probably get some very common beliefs that they all hold. I also think there'd probably be some individual ones in there too. I think dependent on their challenges and perhaps adversity that they've overcome away from sport. And I think we see that in sport a lot, don't we? A lot of people use sport to overcome that adversity in other areas. So I suspect there would probably be some quite individual beliefs that really work for that individual that might not be relevant or work in the same way for somebody else. But my gut feeling is I think there would probably be some very common ones amongst the collective in terms of their own self-belief and self-confidence. That's where I'd put my money. That's a conversation I would love to have. Maybe that's the next goal, is to try and sneak into an Olympic village somewhere just to ask that question. But I think that would be a really interesting question to ask.
Have you found in sort of, and I mean, you mentioned that you wear lots of different hats, right? Or have worn lots of different hats. And I sort of looked through your things. I think you were involved with the police force quite extensively, it seems. You've done sort of sport at your own, within your own sort of sphere at quite a high level, if I understand that correctly. Have you found that there's sort of certain beliefs that interfere? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah, for me personally, or for individuals?
In general.
Okay.
Yeah, either.
I think I'm worth it, I'm good enough is probably the most common one that can be quite debilitating for people, like in terms of limiting what their potential is or what they believe their potential is. And there's so many things that people, when you initially ask them those questions, that actually you have to peel back a number of layers before you get to that core belief that they just don't feel that they're good enough, not worthy enough. So not worthy enough to have that level of success, or not worthy enough for people to invest time and energy into them. Yeah, and that can often be very, very deeply rooted. But it's a learned, our beliefs are very much learned. And so when we can identify what they are, I personally don't think that we need to know where they come from to be able to change them. We just need to know what what we believe at present, and what do we want to believe to help us to be able to move forward and achieve what it is that we want to achieve. But I think that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough comes up a lot. Male, female, I don't think that's gender specific. I don't think that's necessarily to do with circumstance or anything like that, or even what they've achieved. I've spoken to the most successful people who still question whether or not they're good enough. I think it's a very common one, and it can be very restricting.
That's an interesting sort of thought, because then if there is such a thing as a better belief, right, that could be better for your performance, and I think I agree with you that it is very individual, more so than we care to admit, because if somebody that is very successful can have as an underpinning, like, am I good enough? And at the same point in time, somebody that's not successful can have the same belief about themselves, then that is not necessarily a driver belief for their performance, but it is something that limits their ability to achieve at their best. Would you then say it's sort of, so those people that are successful and have that versus the people that are not yet successful and have that belief as an underpinning, is it just their skill that's allowed them? Is it that it's been luck and that have allowed them to be successful, or is it something different?
I wonder whether sometimes there's a different belief that's driving that drives that. So I think sometimes if we stay on that belief of not being good enough, quite often there's another belief that people need to prove that they're good enough. So because you believe you're not good enough, you need to prove that you're good enough. So that's then when you quite often see people who work so much harder. They'll be the ones that will push more than they have been asked to do, because they feel they need to prove more because they're not good enough. So I think sometimes, it's a double-edged sword almost, isn't it? Of what can what can really hold us back can also push a different behavior that also achieves success in a different way. I think in terms of being effective, you want the beliefs that will drive all of the behaviors that will drive that performance. But I think sometimes there's a mix of beliefs that all drive different behaviors. And sometimes that mix and match of behaviors can still drive a really good high performance. So we see it in, in the corporate world, people who will work harder, they'll often describe it as people pleasing, they want to do a good job, but the underlying belief is they don't feel that they're good enough, so they feel they need to prove themselves, which means they work harder than everybody else, which then means they often achieve more than everybody else, but it doesn't shift that belief and it still drives the same behavior. So it's always interesting to look at what sits behind high performance, whether in sport or in the working world, and that sometimes it's those more negative and more limiting beliefs that actually are driving the performance, which is often why people don't want to let go of them, because it's served them quite well, even though you and I both know that there's more efficient and more effective ways of doing it. But it's part of, it's attached to identity to a point, and so it's very hard to let go of, because it's the way that they've seen the world for so long that it's very hard to let go of that.
I think you raise a very important idea, that sometimes a belief like that, where I'm not good enough, can actually be the catalyst for some to achieve excellence, because they need to prove that they are, and they do that through their actions. As you were speaking there, I sort of think that, okay, but sometimes that's the different is then the motivator, right? Like, what's the carrot?
Yeah.
Because that might be the thing I want to get away from. But one individual like really, really wants to be the world's best athlete, and another person maybe doesn't want to. But they're both playing the sport. And so because the one has that sort of motivation, the carrot that pulls on them at the same time, and somebody else doesn't, then the one that has the carrot, you really see them sort of use this negative belief in, and it's not really a negative belief. I don't look at beliefs as negative or positive. I think more of them as enhancing and not enhancing the experience that you want to have. And so then this belief enhances the experience, even though if they go sit quietly by themselves, it's something that could make them feel completely miserable.
Yeah, and that's actually, as you were describing that, that's kind of describes my experience within the sport of strongwoman, because I never stepped into that sport to do that at a high level. I didn't ever step into that sport to even compete. I just had just these different events, different situations, different opportunities. I'm somebody who says yes to things. I'm somebody who gives 100%. So even if I've signed up to something, I'm going to give it 100%. And I gave 100% and it turned out really well. But I never intended to compete at that level. It escalated really quickly. And it was when I got to Europe's Strongest Woman within a year of my first ever competition. And I was looking around and, people were there to compete. People were there to win. And I didn't feel that. I was there to, I was there for the experience. I was there to push to see what I could achieve. I wasn't focused. I didn't have that competitive mindset of pushing myself against what I knew other people could achieve. The mindset was very, very different. And I realized, probably about halfway through the competition that, like, hey, this is perhaps a step too far. This is no longer enjoyable. And this isn't, in terms of what I'm looking for, this is no longer working for me. I mean, I had other priorities, I had other things that were really important to me at that time. And for me to go to that next level would have taken a different level of commitment again. And it just wasn't what I was looking for. But, a lot of the people that I competed against, they had that, they wanted that. You could see they were hungry for it, and they've gone on to compete at World's Strongest Woman and win titles. So there's definitely a difference in terms of what the intention and purpose when people step into those environments. And yeah, I thought it was what I wanted until I got there and realized that it wasn't, and that it was just that I enjoyed the competitions, I enjoyed the competitive atmosphere, I enjoyed and really thrived on seeing what I could push myself to do and what I could achieve. I just didn't have that mindset of the comparison of pushing myself against what others were achieving. And it's respectfully, it's not a tested sport. So again, that comes into the equation of, as a clean athlete, you recognize that there's a certain limit potentially to your potential, that others have a different threshold. So I think it gets to that point where you step into a different world. The more the higher the level you're competing at, you step from one world into another, and that for me wasn't a world that I was. It wasn't about being comfortable, because I thrive in that discomfort. It was more about that alignment of actually what's important to me right now. That level wasn't. There were more important things that I wanted to put time and energy into. So I did continue competing, but I stayed at sort of regional and national level. It's I think you don't know these things until you get there, do you? I see it with the sport of basketball as well. So my son plays basketball. I'm involved with the men's and women's professional team, and you see the guys come over that have spent years through college, and all they want to do is be a pro baller, and they get to the reality of what that life is like. And a lot of them, after one season, step away and say, actually, this is not for me. Playing abroad, playing overseas is, being in that different environment is not for me. And I think that's, in terms of the work that I do, it's about finding a level of success that aligns with everything that's important to you, because it's you've got to make it all work as one big picture. And I think my own experiences of trying to find that way to align it, still push myself, still ambitious, still competitive, but in a way that aligns with everything else that's in my world that's important to me.
And all of those are governed by beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I love all the sort of little subtle nuances that I can sort of pick up there on, okay, well, there's a thought or an idea that you're having about yourself, like the type of person I am, which is linked, like you said earlier, to your identity, right? I'm not the type of person that maybe competes in a sport where we're pushing boundaries and maybe potentially doing illegal things. That's not who I am. And so I don't engage with that, or that's where I've said, okay, cool, no more. And I think what I appreciate about you sharing that more is there's many athletes that I know of that are trapped in a sport. I call it trapped, right? Because they're pursuing their motivation, but there isn't the alignment in terms of their other beliefs around that. So they might say, oh, I want to be a professional in this, right? And maybe it's buying into the idea of it or the status of it, or maybe it's because their parents sort of put the pressure, whatever it might be, but there isn't that personal alignment with it because of all the sort of beliefs that they do have and things that are important to them, right? So you mentioned that too, like knowing and understanding what's important to you and sort of aligning your life with that. And so I think there's a lot in that for people to take from.
And I think for a lot of people, there's that return on the investment. You think they've worked so hard to get there that, one of the things I say to people is, does this level of success feel as you wanted it to feel, as you hoped it would feel? And if not, why not? What's not connecting for you? And I think even in a career, you look at people who invest a lot of time in their training, or it's the thing that they always told everybody that they wanted to do. So it's almost like, well, I worked this hard to get here, or I invested this much to get here, so now I've got to stick it out. Because, whether it's pride or ego or that sense of fear of judgment from other people, but there's a lot of people that are sticking things out that don't align. And so on the outside, People would probably describe them as very successful, but for them inside, it just doesn't feel how success could feel.
Yeah, 100%. As you were saying that, I was thinking, from what you're explaining and sort of where our conversation is at, I'm hoping that it's clear to a certain extent that we have these inside things, right, that drive performance, and that it's actually, like, I often think that maybe the idea of mental performance is misunderstood by a lot of people, right? What it actually means and how you go about that, and what is it that you're actually busy with. And I think this is one part of it, right? And so that's what I'm liking about this conversation. I don't think we've sort of delved into this in the podcast for quite some time, is the understanding that mental performance is working with these inner things that's inside of you, right? Your beliefs, your values, the things that are important for you, and how are you busy aligning to that? So you said at the start of the conversation that the mindset is important and also the strategy. So what is it about strategy that is so important that you believe that that's what we can learn from you?
I think it's the importance of having a plan and setting that direction that you're going towards. And I think for me, it's around that clarity of knowing where you're going and having a plan of how to get there. And I think a lot of athletes do this really well, because a lot of athletes will have that training plan. So they'll have, they'll start with the end in mind. This is the competition date. This is what we're heading towards. And this is the plan of how we will line everything up so that everything is at that peak state, ready for competition day. And I think that same process applies in life and in your career as well. I think the people who are most successful line up that strategy. They're very clear on that plan. They're very clear on where they're going, how they're going to get there, the milestones that they're going to reach at different places, and what good looks like, feels like, and what will be different when they reach it. And within that, they will have that clarity around what they need to believe is true to get there. They'll make sure that it aligns with their values and their principles, and they'll be very clear about what it is that they want and what they're willing to negotiate and what is non-negotiable. And I think the people who are clearest around that are the people who achieve that level of success that aligns with everything that's important. I think the people who don't have that clarity tend to focus, they think, oh, I need to focus on my mindset, or I need to focus on the plan, and not necessarily see how the two link in and are interdependent on each other. Because if you've got the mindset, it enables you to put the plan into action, but you also have the clarity as to how you're going to follow that plan. But you also need the plan to know what mindset you need to get there. So I think the two are very much interdependent. I think you hear a lot of people talk about them very separately and not understand how the two need to link together.
Yeah, I'm finding it's weird how with the podcast there's all these at various times. I don't know why it is, but at various times conversations sort of link from one to the other with guests that follow on each other. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, I recorded a podcast where somebody was explaining how we separate things out, right? We separate the mind from the brain. In fact, I was doing it, right? I was in the conversation. He's like, no, I'm going to encourage you to put those two ideas back together. I'm like, yeah, it makes complete sense, right? And I remember in learning that sort of about mental performance and the things I studied at one point in time, this idea that we can only separate things in language within us, right? So you can only separate your mind actually from your body in language, but the reality is that they're interconnected. They're one system. And so when you now talk about mindset and strategy, that's actually one thing. It's not, it's just like deja vu to me, right? I'm just sitting here going like, oh, okay, yeah, it is again. It's popping up its head again, that because I think I'm that type of person that puts things in silos. I'm very good at that. Like, okay, here's this little thing, let's just pay it. But the reality is that things are not necessarily in silos. They're all integrated in some way. So I was thinking about, because you're talking about athletes and sort of that they're really good at setting their goals, and there's this event that comes and they can prioritize and periodize their way through that to be
Mhm.
at peak when
Mm,
the Olympics happen, or
yeah.
when I'm wondering what that means for everyday people, right? Because we don't necessarily have such big events in our lives, if that makes sense. There's not like every 4 years an Olympic Games, and I've only got two of those to live, in my sports. I got like 8 years, yeah, that I can try and go achieve a gold medal. Or, cricketers who play all around the world, they might play in all these tournaments, but there's World Cups every now and then, and you want to try and win these things. But I'm wondering, like in life, there isn't necessarily like there's a job, right? But we also know that you can get a job, but the job is not the thing, really. Like you said earlier, a lot of people achieve things and then they realize, oh shucks, this is not what I wanted. So if we think of the strategy for life and the fact that we're not in so much control of so many things, how do you make sense of that? If any of that makes sense to you as I speak about it.
And I'd follow the same process. I think although there might not be goals that like we would necessarily describe them in the same way, I think people see that they have a goal. People will have an aspiration, in a year's time, I want this to be different. Or, I think a great way I heard somebody describe it to me at an event in January, and she said the way I like to look at it is I ask myself, what do I want to be true in a year's time? And I think that's a great way of looking at it. So I think in sports, we've got very tangible, easily measurable goals. It's much easier to break them down. You can see the very clear milestones in there. It can be more difficult sort of for personal, professional type goals. And especially if they're goals that aren't as tangible and measurable. So, when people talk about, I want to be happier, I want to be healthier. Okay, like what does that look like? What will be different? And I think that then makes it a lot harder to break it down. Okay, what would the 6 month point look like? What would it look like, in a month's time? But actually, the more people describe it, the more actually a lot of people, when you give them some time and space to think, they do have an idea of what they want to be different. And it might be how they look different, it might be how they feel different, it might be how they behave differently, or having different habits, different habits, different behaviors, or they might want to feel differently, so it might be a mindset shift. So although it's not quite as easy to break it down into the easy goals like you would do with a training plan, it is possible, and it is just having those conversations and getting them to describe what that looks like, and then start to look at the steps that they would need to take to start to either implement certain things or take away certain things. So like habit changes, behavior changes, and how they want to focus in on that as well. So I think there's always a mix. But I had a conversation with two people yesterday, and one was very much around going into a new job, as getting promotion in leadership. And so they were talking about what do they want to look like as what do they want to be true as a leader? How do they want to show up as a leader? What habits, behaviors do they want to have? How do they want to engage with their new team? Like, how do they want their team to feel? How do they want to feel? So it's not quite as easy to measure because it can be quite subjective, but I think you can still follow the same process. It just means the reflections and the measures are slightly different. I think you can follow the same process that you would do, for a training plan. It's still a plan to follow. It's still things to do and show up for and be disciplined with and be consistent with. It just they're different actions, I guess.
Would you say to people who are, so I'm aware that some of our beliefs make that we do not like procedure, or we do not like the systemic nature of, say, following a plan, setting out the plan, following it step by step. Some people prefer to be more options orientated, or they prefer to be a little bit more go with the flow. Me personally, I'm a little bit like that, more than being procedural at times. What would you say to people that are like that, right? That are struggling potentially to, and I don't know if struggle is the right word, because that might just be their preference, right? So
I think you can have flexibility within a system. I think you can have a structure in place that actually enables that flexibility. And as humans, we've got that psychological need, haven't we? We like the certainty, but we also like the variety. And sometimes that clashes. But actually, within certainty, we can plan to a certain extent the variety, or we can leave enough flexibility for that variety. So I think, I mean, for me, the structure provides that freedom. So I guess it's the belief of how you see that structure. I think for me, having a structure in place allows me that freedom to prioritize the things that are really important to me. Whereas if I didn't have that structure in place, I think life and the world would naturally prioritize things that perhaps I wouldn't. And then I would find that I don't have that time to prioritize the things that are important to me. So I find personally that structure allows me that freedom to prioritize what's important. And so I feel like I have more flexibility around that. But again, it's very different, isn't it? And I think as coaches, this is what our role is, isn't it? Is not giving everybody the same plan and speaking to people in the same way. It's working with people to get the best out of them so that they reach their full potential and they reach that level of success that feels good for them. I think whether you're a sports coach or a career coach or a life coach, whatever type of coach you are, your role is to guide that person on their journey, not map the journey out for them or tell them what car they got to drive and the route they've got to take. Like that has to be their decision, because we all operate slightly differently, don't we? And in terms of being a high performer, what we need as an individual to be a high performer, again, is going to be very different. It's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, right? Because so many, I think let me find the exact words, because I think this is a thought I've had in the back of my mind, but I don't think I've ever verbalized it. The social media, what is, I use them too from time to time. We send the Instagram reel to our athletes. This is what Kobe Bryant does. This is how he meditates. Just yesterday, I worked with a football academy in Cape Town, and just yesterday there was a thing shared about some athlete and his breathing process before he goes to sleep, right? And so I think it's good to have these examples of how elite athletes engage with mental performance, but it is not necessarily true that will work for you 100%. Like, to me, as an example, anything breathing related will work. We're all human beings. We all have a mind. We all have a heart. We all have a lungs. We all have this system inside of us with, our neurology, etc., etc. It will work. But the alignment with the philosophy or the idea or the understanding of that thing, that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And so I think it comes to, like, do you know yourself? Do you understand yourself? Do you do you know that if you do something and it gives you that benefit? I love what you said there around the structure brings the freedom. So if I understand that sitting every morning and meditating for 10 minutes brings value to my life, well, and I love doing it and I feel good afterwards, and it gives me clarity for the day, whatever it might be. The structure of that then brings the freedom potentially in the rest of the day, where I'm now less muddled in my thinking. I'm less all over the place, or less clear, or not as intentional as I can be. So maybe just back to the connection with the social media. So I think what I'm taking from this a little bit in this conversation is that as a coach, I've got to be more mindful of, when I share something, to maybe share that with a question. And not just share that and say, oh, look at these international athletes and what they're doing. You should be doing that. Because I think that at times creates a bit of a guilty mindset in athletes, where it's like, oh, shucks, that guy's doing it, I'm not doing it. So, there's like this thing that happens versus saying, okay, hang on, this is what he does. Does that align with me?
I think it's principles, isn't it? I think it's with these videos, it's not mirroring necessarily what they're doing. It's taking the principle of why they're doing it and then working out what that looks like for you.
Yeah,
So
I
I've
love that.
mentioned Kobe Bryant now. I'm a massive Kobe Bryant fan. But if you were to look at the routine and structure of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, they've all got completely different workout patterns, routines. Kobe Bryant is, everybody talks about Kobe Bryant being in the gym, getting shots up 3 a.m., 4 a.m., which completely contradicts all of the research about the need for sleep and mental focus when you sleep. And I think one of the college basketball, I've read recently, one of the college basketball teams did some research where they got all of the players on the college team to have, I think, 1 hour extra sleep and performance shot up. So, I mean, Kobe Bryant, I think, goes against the grain for a lot of things, but you've got 3 incredibly high performing, like at their best athletes, all do something very, very different to be at the top of their game. And I think that's a message in itself, isn't it? It's look at the principles. What do they all do? If you were to put all of their approaches onto paper, what would be the commonalities? And a lot of it is they worked out what works for them, and then they are disciplined and consistent with it. But
Yeah.
what good looks like for all of them is very, very different. The difference is they commit to it, they show up to it, they make it happen.
Yeah, that's true. I would add into that my sense about all of those are they have a strategy in place to become present and be task focused for performance. They're more about team than they're about themselves.
Yes, I would agree.
To a certain extent. They're not there at 3 a.m. because if that's what they do, right? They're not there at 3 a.m. because that's just about them and glorifying them and for them to say, I'm the best in the world. They're there at 3 a.m. Yes, because they need that skill set to be good on the team for the purpose of the team.
Yeah.
I get that sort of a sense from all of them. And a principle is they understand that it's not just about the skill. There's more to it, right? There's this other side. And they've got, whether they meditate or breathe or journal or, whatever it is that they do, I sometimes think, I always say to people, mental performance is really easy or really simple. Sorry, it's really simple. It's not necessarily rocket science. It's not this super complicated thing. It could be for you as simple as, you know what, I have to spend time once a week with my granddad, because whenever I do, his wisdom and the way he, it could be, I've got to take my son and my wife into nature every week and just go unplug and take my shoes off and feel the sand underneath my feet. That's mental performance to me. It's not necessarily the sit on the couch, figure things out. It is more about understanding and alignment. And alignment could be beach. I got to go do that. It could be getting into cold water in nature. And so I think, in as much as we talk about beliefs and we talk these things, it's easy to get lost in that. The easier way is to say, like, what we've sort of, I think, speaking about at this point in time, like, what really works for me? What gets me to feel in the way I want to feel for performance? How do I do more of that? And then build your strategy around that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm taking from
and
this
then put
conversation.
the structure in place that supports the strategy to happen.
Yeah.
It, as
Can you
even if
explain that a
it's a
little bit better?
flexible. Sorry, say again.
Can you explain that a little bit better? Put the structure in place.
So I think for me, so the framework that I use with my clients starts with the plan, and then we work on the intention and the identity. So the intention is we explore why this is important. We go into the values, we go into the people that will benefit, the primary benefit, the secondary benefit. Then we talk about identity, like who do you need to become to be successful with this? What habits, what behaviors, what needs to be different? What do you step into? What do you leave behind? Then we talk about the performance, so that what's motivating, the discipline, the consistency, and then we talk about structure. So once we've got everything else lined up, what do we want to do, or what do they want to do? What do they want to make happen? How do they want to make it happen? Why do they want to make it happen? Then you look at the structure that's kind of the bit that holds it all into place to enable it all to happen. So I think for me, whether I look at my own journey and what I've achieved in different areas, is always been all of those five pinned together hold everything into place to make it easy to show up and do the thing that you said you were going to do. And I think discipline is a big thing. I think certainly the difference that I notice between the high performers and the people who struggle a lot more, is that high performers, they're disciplined. They don't wait for the feeling. They do the thing that they said they were going to do, or they do the thing that the coach told them to do. Like they don't wait until they feel like going to the gym and doing the workout, or they don't wait until they feel a certain way before doing something. If the plan says, or the coach says, or that's what needs to happen, they get on and do it. And that's the difference between the discipline and then the motivation, which to me, in my experience, is the difference between doing something and doing something really, really well.
Hmm. Yeah. What a conversation. That's sort of where I'm at this point in time. Like, I think I know, and I appreciate you for sort of being here and sort of sharing your thoughts and your ideas, right? Because it feels like we've started with this idea that, hey, there's these things inside of us that can really affect performance, that can really, they play a big part, right? They are the drivers of performance. And there's better ones, but it's not necessarily a specific better one. There's better ones that are better for you, and there's ones that are not so good for you. And your job, in inverted commas, is sort of to figure that out, to gain that awareness about what is it that actually works for me.
But I think
Once you know that, to
that's
then
the question.
align your plans and your strategies, etc., to that. Yeah.
I think that's the question: is what's the best thing that I can believe to be true to make this happen? So I think you can ask yourself what the best belief is. So there probably is a best or better, but absolutely what I think you've summarized it really well in terms of like you work on that bit and then you put everything else in place to kind of really support it. It's a bit like it's like the pottery, isn't it? You kind of create the pottery, but then you put it into the kiln to kind of secure it into place. And I think that you need to mold it, you need to make it work for you, you need to make it, it's not a one size fits all. Everybody ticks that little bit differently. So once you know what you've got in place, you want to put it into the kiln and kind of really solidify it and make it more permanent. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that analogy, that because a pottery you can mold, right? Which says we can mold our thinking about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, our
Yeah.
beliefs about ourselves. We can mold our memories. We can mold our wants and desires, essentially. And then we've got to take that into some process to make sure that it gets solidified so that you can use it. So you can put water in it and pour it or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a really
Yeah.
good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody's sort of listened to our conversation here and they want to reach out to you to connect, what would be the best ways for them to do that?
I'm on all of the social channels, but if you put my name in, so zoethompson.uk, you'll find the website and all the socials from there. But yeah, it'd be great to connect with people that have listened in and see what their takes are on our conversation, because it's been really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, and you too.
Cool.